You've probably heard the story of the 300 Spartans, right? You know, the ultimate last stand against absolutely impossible odds. But what if I told you the version we all know from movies gets a lot of things wrong? That the real story is actually way more strategic, more complex, and honestly, even more heroic. Okay, let's dive in and uncover the real story of the Battle of Thermopylae. So picture this. It's 480 BC, and you're a Greek watching the army of the Persian king Xerxes cross into Europe. This quote, "This was the terrified cry of someone who actually saw it. The force was so huge, so unbelievably massive, it felt like a god had literally come down to wipe them out. The column of soldiers just kept coming and coming for days. It was a sight nobody had ever seen before."
Now you'll hear ancient historians throw around numbers in the millions, but modern scholars figure Xerxes' frontline fighting force was closer to this: 200,000 soldiers. And yeah, that's not 5 million, but it was still a terrifyingly huge number, probably more than all the Greek city-states could gather, even if they all teamed up. This wasn't just an army, it was a human tidal wave, ready to wash over Greece.
So with this massive force now on their soil, the Greek city-states had a choice, and it was a stark one: unite and fight for their lives, or get wiped off the map one by one. The decision they made would, quite literally, define the course of Western history.
Okay, but before we jump into the battle itself, we really need to talk about the Hollywood version, because it's created a lot of myths. The truth is way more interesting, I promise. So let's just take a minute and separate the fact from the fiction.
First up, forget the image of bare-chested warriors in leather speedos. Real Spartans were hoplites. We're talking heavily armored infantry, completely encased in bronze, carrying these huge, heavy shields and deadly long spears. And the Persians? They weren't monsters. Their elite unit, the Immortals, were some of the most highly trained and well-equipped soldiers in the world.
And here it is. This is the biggest myth of them all. The 300 Spartans were not alone, not even close. King Leonidas was in command of a combined force of about 10,000 allied Greeks from a bunch of different city-states. The Spartans, they were the elite corps, for sure, the heart of the army, but they were just one part of a much larger, unified Greek defense.
Which brings us to the unsung hero of this story, the Athenian navy. While the Spartans were holding that narrow pass on land, the Athenians were fighting a desperate battle against the massive Persian fleet at sea. Without them cutting off supplies and stopping reinforcements from landing behind the Spartans, the stand at Thermopylae would have been over in hours. You really can't tell the story of the 300 without talking about the Athenian sailors.
So here's the most important thing to understand. This was not a suicide mission. Not at all. It was a brilliant, calculated plan to use geography as their ultimate weapon. The Greeks weren't just looking for a heroic place to die. They were looking for a place where they could actually win. The strategy was this really clever two-pronged attack, a coordinated defense on both land and sea. On land, you have Leonidas and the army plugging up that narrow pass at Thermopylae. At the exact same time, the Athenian general Themistocles would use his navy to block the Persian fleet in the narrow straits of Artemision. The hope was to grind the entire invasion to a halt.
And this is why Thermopylae was so perfect. The pass, they called it the Hot Gates, was incredibly narrow, jammed between a sheer cliff on one side and the sea on the other. In a place like this, Persia's huge numbers meant absolutely nothing. They couldn't surround the Greeks. They had to face the deadly Spartan phalanx, this terrifying wall of overlapping shields and spears head-on, just a few guys at a time.
So after a standoff that lasted for several days, Xerxes sent a messenger demanding that the Greeks lay down their weapons and surrender. King Leonidas' reply has become the stuff of legend, a perfect summary of Spartan defiance. Basically, if you want my head, come and take it. The battle was on.
The battle would rage for 3 absolutely brutal days. But you know, before the first spear was even thrown, Persian scouts reported seeing something totally bizarre. The Spartans were just calmly combing their long hair. Xerxes was completely baffled, but for the Spartans, this was a tradition. It was how they prepared themselves for a glorious death in battle.
So on day 1, wave after wave of Persian infantry just crashed against that Greek shield wall, and they were slaughtered. The line held. On day 2, a furious Xerxes sent in his best troops, the 10,000 Immortals, and guess what? They failed too. For 2 straight days, it seemed like the Greek line was absolutely unbreakable.
I mean, just look at this. The difference in casualties was just staggering. They say Xerxes, who was watching the whole thing from his throne, literally leaped to his feet in anger and frustration
not once, but multiple times. His massive, world-conquering army was being decimated by this tiny force that he just couldn't break. How is this even possible?
This scorecard really tells the tale. After just 2 days, the Persians had lost an estimated 24,000 men, and that included 2 of Xerxes' own brothers. The Greeks, they lost about 2,000, mostly their supporting troops. And the 300 Spartan heavy infantry at the center of it all, they had suffered exactly 0 casualties. The strategy was working perfectly.
Okay, so if the Greek position was so strong, and their soldiers were so unbelievably effective, how did this whole thing end in a legendary last stand? How on earth did the Persians finally find a way through this impenetrable wall of shields and spears?
Well, the answer, as it so often is in history, came down to one single act of betrayal. A secret that would turn what was a brilliant tactical defense into a legendary and necessary sacrifice.
The traitor wasn't some spurned, deformed warrior seeking revenge like you see in the movies. The historical reality is actually a lot simpler, but just as devastating. It was a local farmer who, tempted by a huge reward, showed the Persians a hidden mountain path that went right around the Greek defenses.
The moment Leonidas found out he was about to be surrounded, he made a critical decision. He knew the pass was lost. He announced that the Spartans would stay and fight to the death. It was their duty, and it fulfilled a prophecy. But here's the crucial part. He then gave the rest of the Greek allies the honorable choice to retreat, to fall back and save themselves to fight another day.
And while a lot of the allies did retreat, not everyone left. About 1,400 men chose to stay with Leonidas for that final stand. This group included, of course, the 300 Spartans, but also 400 Thebans and about 700 Thespians who flat out refused to abandon their post. So on that third day, surrounded on all sides, the remaining Greeks fought with a ferocity that stunned the Persians. When their spears shattered, they used their swords. When their swords broke, they fought with their bare hands and their teeth. Leonidas eventually fell, and the last, desperate moments of the battle were a brutal struggle by the handful of surviving Spartans to protect the body of their king.
In the end, every last one of the defenders was killed. A furious Xerxes, in a fit of rage, ordered Leonidas' head to be cut off and put on a spike. The Persian army could finally march on to their real prize, the city of Athens. But when they got there, they found a ghost town. The city was completely empty. The sacrifice at Thermopylae wasn't for nothing. It had bought just enough time for Athens to be evacuated.
So you see, Thermopylae was a tactical defeat, no question, but it became a massive strategic and moral victory that inspired all of Greece to finally unite and push back the invasion. It's a story that is echoed for thousands of years. So why do you think it still resonates with us so much? Is it the pure courage against impossible odds, the unwavering commitment to duty, or that ultimate sacrifice, all for the idea of freedom? It's a legend, for sure, but it's built on a truth that to this day still inspires.